All right, can you hear me? There we go. Okay. So, starting out, I've had this for a couple months, this message, or just the start of it. I was reading in Acts chapter 10, and something clicked. And I went and I told Pastor Chad, and he was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then I never did anything else with it. So, yeah, and he never preached it. So this part, I went in, and Sunday, he caught me with that thing. And immediately after I said, I'm off Wednesday, I went, oh, here we go. And he said, oh, great, you're preaching for me. And I wanted to say no, but something inside was like, you have something, you need to give it. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. And at that point, Sunday, he usually gives me a week. So at that point, I'm like, you have 3 days, and all you have is an idea. And I'm like, so you best get moving. So a lot of this was done while I was at work when we were slow. And it actually came into something that I'm pretty proud of. But it is Acts, and I'm not reading all of this. It's Acts 10, chapter 10, 9 through 48. And I'm going to summarize most of it. The title of the message is Trapped in Tradition. And as we go through it, you'll start to understand why it's titled that. But my introduction is called The Necessary Disruption. Sometimes God's greatest work in our lives begins with a disruption. One that shakes our comfort, challenges our tradition, and forces us to confront what we thought we knew. In Acts 10, Peter experiences such a disruption. Peter was a man of deep conviction, a disciple, a preacher, and a leader in the early church. Yet even he struggled to grasp the fullness of God's plan. God wasn't just expanding Peter's ministry, he was expanding Peter's mindset. This passage forces us to really ask ourselves, what if God's plan is bigger than what I'm comfortable with? What if he's calling me to a place I've avoided, to people I've overlooked, or a purpose I never imagined? So I have 3 points. My first point is don't discredit God's plan because of your discomfort. In Acts 10, 9 through 16, and I'm gonna summarize. Peter has a vision of a sheet filled with animals that were considered unclean by Jewish law. God commanded Peter to rise, kill, and eat. Peter refused. Ended up telling him 3 times, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. And that, at that time, really hit me, because that, when I first read that, and then when I read the whole rest of the passage, I went back to that verse specifically, when God said, don't ever call something unclean that I've made clean. And I thought, like, how many times as Christians do we always be like, oh, I'm just a sinner. He's like, oh, I'm this, but God's made you clean. Why are you going and trying to make yourself something else? So it started with that, and that was my original thought. And then as I went deeper, that whole thought just disappeared, and it actually started to become something completely different and something so much deeper than what that is. Peter's response, a lot of, like, when you read that, when Peter is, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I am a Jew. We have things. We don't eat unclean things. I'm not doing that. When you hear that, you think that's really just like rebellion against God, but it wasn't rebellion. It was fear. His tradition, his upbringing, his understanding of holiness made him resistant to what God was showing him. So right now, I'm just going to take the rest of the passage and sum it into like this one little thing instead of reading all 40 verses. He has this vision of the animals. God tells him to rise, kill, and eat. He refuses. Wakes up from the vision, perplexed about like why, like what was that? And then God speaks to him. Men are coming. They need you. Go with them. Don't haste. He's sitting on a rooftop. Men find him. He goes with them. And they're Gentiles. Well, Gentiles and Jews, they don't mix. They bring him to this man called Cornelius. Cornelius says, I had God came and visited me. He said that I needed to find you. So he sent the people, got him. Peter went, told them the gospel. His whole household got saved. So, what if Peter had refused to go to Cornelius' house because it was outside of his comfort zone? He would have missed a divine opportunity. Peter's obedience didn't just change his life. It opened the door for an entire household to experience salvation. What if your obedience, even in discomfort, is the key to someone else's breakthrough? God's plan doesn't always fit within our comfort zone. His purpose may ask you to step into places that feel foreign, unfamiliar, or even unsettling. God may ask you to forgive someone that you vowed that you'd never speak to again. He may call you to serve people you once judged. What if Peter refused to go to Cornelius' house because it was outside of his comfort zone? He would have missed a divine opportunity. Likewise, don't let discomfort keep you from stepping into something new that God's doing. He may lead you into spaces where your pride has to die for his grace to shine. Don't mistake discomfort for disobedience. Sometimes what feels unfamiliar is exactly where God is working. My second point, you may not need to forget where you came from, but Peter's background as a devout Jew shaped his values and his understanding of God. However, what once guided him was now blinding him. God wasn't asking Peter to forget his roots, but he was asking him to grow beyond his roots. In Acts 10:28, Peter says, "You are well aware that it is against our law for a Jew to associate with or visit a Gentile, but God has shown me that I should not call anything impure or unclean." Peter's background had taught him to separate himself from Gentiles, but God was showing him that separation, it's not holiness, but it was pride. Some of us have spent years justifying our behaviors, our mindsets, because, and as Chad said a second ago, so I was kind of laughing when he said it, it's how I was raised. But there comes a point to where God calls you to outgrow those patterns. We may not need to forget where we came from, but there comes a place where we need to stop acting like it. Where, especially when it comes to where God is taking us. Bitterness might have protected you in your past, but it has no place in the future. Isolation may have been your coping mechanism, but God is calling you to community now. Pride may have been your defense in the past, but humility is what God's required now. God doesn't ask you to deny your past, but he is asking you to stop worshiping it. Point number 3, stop trying to sit at the tables Jesus already flipped. Peter's hesitation wasn't just about food, it was about people. For generations, Jews and Gentiles have been separated from a system creating insiders and outsiders. But Jesus didn't come to protect the system. Jesus didn't come to protect old systems. He came to tear them down. In Matthew 21:12-13, Jesus flipped the tables at the temple because corruption and division was taking place where prayer was supposed to be for everyone, for all people. Yet too often we try to rebuild the same tables, places where pride, judgment, and favoritism take a seat. When you refuse to forgive, you might be sitting at a table Jesus already flipped. When you hold onto a grudge and prejudice, you might be sitting at a table Jesus flipped. When you choose comfort over calling, you might be sitting at a table Jesus flipped. When you keep compromising your values to fit in, you might be sitting at a table Jesus flipped. When you keep Let me see. When you're more comfortable controlling your image than surrendering your character to God, you might be sitting at a table Jesus flipped. When you're staying busy to avoid the silence where God's conviction is trying to speak, you might be sitting at a table Jesus flipped. You know, there's growing up, we got to pick our own chairs at the dining table, and Tony can attest to this. Every single chair at the dining table growing up, so 10 chairs, every single one was different. When we got the chairs, we got to pick out which chair was ours. So to this day, when we go and visit, my chair's my chair. When we go to sit at dinner, my chair's my chair. My sister-in-law sat in my chair. I was not hesitant to say, get up. I'm only here for 7 days. Get out of my chair. You've been here for 2 years. And so many times, that's how we are with the tables Jesus already flipped. Why? Because we're comfortable. We'd rather be in pain because we know what's there than go into the table where we're not sure where it is. We'd rather stay chained to the chair. We'd rather stay chained to this table than go somewhere new. Because why? Because newness can bring all sorts of things. It can bring pain, it can bring suffering, or it can bring joy. But why move when you already know what you're in? Jesus didn't just flip tables, but he built a new one. A table where grace is extended to the broken, the outsider, and the one you once overlooked. So why are you trying to sit where Jesus already said, this doesn't belong here? But there's a call to step beyond comfort. When Peter obeyed, everything changed. In Acts 10:44 through 45, the Holy Spirit fell on Cornelius' household, a sign that God's grace wasn't just for one group, one culture, or one tradition. Peter's obedience unlocked revival, but only because he was willing to embrace what was uncomfortable. So I ask you today, what if your discomfort is the doorway through your breakthrough? What if God is calling you to step into spaces that challenge your pride and push your limits? What if the miracle you've been praying for is waiting for you to leave the comfort of your old mindset? What if the miracle you've been praying for is What if the change you're resisting is actually the healing you've been praying for? That's a hard one. The change that I'm resisting. I refuse to go forward because I don't know it. But if I step into it, like I said with the tables, I don't know what's there. But really, it's just the healing that could take 3 days after I decide to move forward to heal from. I'm actually almost done here. So it's time to trust God enough to step to where you haven't stepped before. Don't discredit God's plan because of your own discomfort. Don't cling to the past when he's calling you to outgrow it. And don't waste your time trying to sit at the tables Jesus already flipped. Now, when I was going through this, it was something I needed to hear. I think it's something everyone needs to hear because it's really not the easiest message to listen to and really to apply to your life, because it's not something that we really want based on our flesh. It's hard and it's even offensive because it's not what we want. We want to live the way we want. But let's face it, we've seen how that turns out. We've seen the result of it. But if we begin to surrender what we want for what God wants, maybe we will see God's plan unfold in our lives and the one in the lives around us. And last, if you're willing to let God disrupt your comfort, he will position you for his greatest work yet. That's it.